The other venerables are on the way. They will be here soon. Oh, Bhante Pevaratana, welcome.
Thank you, Bhante. There was no link, Zoom link, in your email. I went to your previous email to get the link.
Actually, I did.
Okay, maybe I couldn't find it.
Yeah, okay. And also in our WhatsApp message, I put the link.
Okay, Bhante, Rahul, Bhante Kamalasiri, Bhante Jinanand, and we have Mikuni today. Yeah.
Yes, Venerable Jechan from Singapore.
Okay. I lived in Singapore for 2 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Which temple? At which temple?
Actually, I was a student at NUS, but I stayed. Yeah, I stayed in Bodhiraja Buddhist Society in Lawrence 30, Geylang.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
A lot of nice food in Singapore.
Yes.
Okay, so let us begin. Dear Venerable Bhikkhus and Bhikkhunis, and dear friends in Dhamma, whoever is watching us on YouTube and Facebook Live, I would like to welcome all of you to our bi-weekly Sutra discussion. Let us begin the discussion by paying respect and homage to the Buddha, by reciting the Namo Tassa 3 times. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. I pay my respect and homage to him, the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the fully enlightened Buddha. So today, so far we have only 4 monastics. So I have the great privilege of having the presence of Bhante Rahula. And with respect and gratitude, I would like to welcome Bhante Rahula to the Dhamma discussion. And also, we have the presence of Bhante Pevaratana from Pittsburgh. And we have Bhante Kamalasuri from Minnesota. And then we have Bhante Jinananda from Ottawa, Canada. And today we have a new friend, the Bhikkhuni, Venerable Jechan, who is joining us from Singapore. It's 7 in the morning. And Venerable Jechan actually used to be here in Toronto, in Mississauga, at the Fogon Shan Temple. We had the great privilege of organizing the annual Vesak festival, which has become a great festival. And so you were one of the organizing committee members. So it's a great joy to have you, Venerable Jechan, for this great discussion. And other venerable monks and nuns, some of them are not feeling well, and maybe they are under the weather today. And some might be joining us later. So whoever is here, we have to continue with today's discussion. And I also would like to welcome all our friends who are watching us on YouTube and Facebook Live. And I know you really look forward to this bi-weekly sutra discussion with the monks and nuns. And because you benefit a lot, you gain a lot of knowledge from this discussion. And if possible, I would like to encourage you to share this discussion on your social media timelines and in Facebook or whatever social media timeline you use. And feel free to share the link, this presentation, this program, for the great benefit of your friends or the people who follow you. So last two times we had great discussion about the practical Buddhism, and we had a lot of interesting points to discuss. We shared a lot of stories, and people really enjoyed. So what prompted us to have a discussion on practical Buddhism was the book authored by Venerable Yuttadhammo, but we did not go into details about the contents, especially two sutras he was talking about in that book. So one sutra is the Sabbasava Sutta of the Majjhima Nikaya, the sutta number 2, the discourse on all taints or fermentations or defilements. And so it was Bhante Jinananda who said, why don't we talk about this sutta? It is interesting discourse of the Buddha and the 7 steps that the Buddha is teaching us in that sutta are very practical for us. This sutta is all about the asavas, how to remove the asavas, the taints of fermentations or defilements. But we have intentionally put the topic, today's Dhamma discussion, sutta discussion topic, as the 7 steps to taming the mind. And I think we also can say 7 steps to freeing the mind, our own mind, from the defilements, from the fermentations, so asavas. We are going to openly and friendly discuss about these 7 steps. And I don't know whether you want me to read out the important passage of the sutta where it points out the 7 steps, and then based on that, then maybe we can continue the discussion. So it says, thus have I heard, on one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. There he addressed the bhikkhus thus, bhikkhus. Venerable Sir, they replied, the Blessed One said this, bhikkhus, I shall teach you a discourse on the restraint of all taints. Listen and attend closely to what I shall say. Yes, Venerable Sir, the bhikkhus replied, the Blessed One said this, because I say that the destruction of the taints is for one who knows and sees, not for one who does not know and see. Who knows and sees what? Wise attention and unwise attention. When one attends unwisely, unirritated taints arise and irritated taints increase. When one attends wisely, unirritated taints do not arise and irritated taints are abandoned. Because there are taints that should be abandoned by seeing. I said, this is the first one. There are taints that should be abandoned by restraining, the second one. There are taints that should be abandoned by using, the third one. There are taints that should be abandoned by enduring, the fourth one. There are taints that should be abandoned by avoiding, the fifth one. There are taints that should be abandoned by removing, the sixth one. There are taints that should be abandoned by developing, the seventh one. So these are the seven steps the Buddha is talking about how to, or maybe the ways to remove the taints that we all have. Maybe this is the way to tame our own mind. Maybe this is the way to free our own mind from certain defilements, maybe all defilements. So let us discuss about this. So let me begin the discussion with Bhante Rahula. Bhante Rahula, do you have anything to say about this?
Well, you could say that the whole of the Buddha's teaching is basically revolves around removing all the taints.
Yeah.
And the taints removed by seeing, this seeing is basically, the insights, the understanding of the Four Noble Truths about understanding suffering, the cause of suffering, the cessation of suffering. So it involves, the practice of course, meditation. It implies that, one already meditates or should meditate, because that's where the seeing is initiated when you start practicing mindfulness and concentration. And of course, the Eightfold Path. So, those things are going to probably be talked about, a little bit later. But the taints removed on seeing, it's also, we'll talk about in the next one about restraining also. But it's seeing the urges in our mind and the urges to do unskillful things, and seeing the suffering, the mental suffering, or even the physical suffering that comes from not having this wise attention. So wise attention means, or the Buddha started with the unwise attention. So a person with unwise attention doesn't attend wisely, and they don't attend to the cause of suffering. They don't attend to the or to suffering itself. They don't recognize that this is suffering, and they don't recognize this is the cause of suffering or how it ceases. But in other sutras, we've also seen that this attending wisely is that in that people, their sense organs get attracted by the marks of beauty to different objects. So you hear a pleasing sound and you start developing a desire to listen or hear that sound, or sights, even thoughts, some fantasy comes in your mind and you fail to attend to it wisely. You only see the pleasurable aspects of that object. So that's attending unwisely, according to the Buddha's instruction. So attending wisely means not paying attention to these marks of beauty, but attending, superimposing or using the understanding that, seeing the marks of, seeing the danger in being clinging or attached to these marks of beauty, and what strong intoxicating effect they have on us, and then the kinds of karma that we cultivate towards that. So it's, seeing that with insight, and you only see it when you're a little, have developed mindfulness and concentration, at least to a certain extent. Although in the beginning, intellectually, you can understand it, but you don't really see it until you're seeing from that mental standpoint, or that mental vibration of a deeper awareness and a concentrated mind that can clearly see the details and is not caught up in its prejudices. So that's why, all the next steps that are being employed are, starting from this point of cultivating wise attention, knowing what is unwise attention and cultivating wise attention, to all the things coming through our senses or the five aggregates. And this is directly related to the seventh of these sort of steps, although they're not practiced one, in a numerical order like that, but in developing. So we're developing that mindfulness factor of mindfulness and investigation. That's how we develop the seeing. So anyway, that's a sort of a starting point on that.
Yeah, thank you, Bhante. Thank you, Bhante Rahula, for beautifully explaining that, the 10 should be abandoned by seeing. Is there anything to add into this discussion? Or Bhante Premaratana, or Bhante Kamalasri, or Bhante Jinananda, or even Venerable Jechen? Like in this sutra, Bhante Rahula, I see under the section of that 10 should be abandoned by seeing, the Ayonisu Manasikara. It says, this is how he attends unwisely. Was I in the past? Was I not in the past? What was I in the past? How was I in the past? Having been what? What did I become in the past? Shall I be in the future? Shall I not be in the future? What shall I be in the future? How shall I be in the future? Having been what? What shall I become in the future? Or else he is inwardly perplexed about the present. Thus, am I? Am I not? What am I? How am I? Where was this being come from? Where will it go? So when he attends unwisely in this way, one of 6 views arises in him. So there are views. This unwise attention leads to a lot of views. So what can we say about this? Is this part of the Ayonisu Manasikara, unfit attention?
Bhante, this passage that you just read, gives an example of Ayoniso Manasikara, as Bhante Rahula mentioned, improper attention or unwise attention.
Yeah.
It just shows that we attend to our experiences with an assumption, with the wrong assumption of wrong assumption of I. Like so, we look at our experiences, assuming that there is an experiencer behind this experience. So rather than looking at the experience, we look at that experience having an assumption that there's an owner to this experience. There's an experiencer. So relating to any of our experiences with that assumption already gives us a very wrong lens to look at our experiences. And according to this sutta, so many views and so many other defilements can arise as a result of that. So in the first section, that defilements that are removed by seeing is that correcting this wrong lens at looking at our own experiences. So rather than asking why I am angry or why I am sad, maybe the question we should ask, how this anger arose in me, and not in me even. How did this anger happen to manifest? So looking at the experience directly rather than as having that assumption of I is a very important way to look at our experiences. So even when you are sad, even when you are angry, when you are frustrated, even if someone blames us, and we get hurt, right? So all these like feeling of hurt, and all these things are part of our defilements. And these things can grow the more we look at those experiences with that wrong lens, why did he blame me? Or maybe, why I'm angry. I think it's very difficult for ordinary person to relate to our experiences, our sensations, our thoughts, our sensory experiences. It's very difficult for us to relate to them without having that, assumption that there's an owner, there's a hidden, owner behind all these experiences. It's very difficult. But by learning the teachings of the Buddha, I think we'll be able to correct that lens and relate to the experiences and analyze those experiences. And so we can we can overcome so many defilements as a result of that.
Yeah, and thank you, Bhante Premaratana, for adding more insights into this discussion. We have two hands raised. First by Bhante Kamalasri from Minnesota. Bhante Kamalasri.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'd like to add something here. This word, the Yoniso Manasikara, Tanisaro Bhikkhu Tanisaro has translated as appropriate attention. I think this is the key word in this sutra.
Yeah.
Because the another sutra there is, so it's called the Aruna Sutra. In the Aruna Sutra, it is explaining the Yoniso Manasikara is the dawn of Majjhima Patipada or Eightfold Path. Then there is a meaning of that. The Yoniso Manasikara comes before the middle path or Eightfold Path or Aryathangika Magga. Yeah, that is important thing here. Then here, in this sutra also, Buddha has mentioned about that. If anyone not see, means if anyone not see the appropriate attention in own mind and inappropriate attention in own mind. That is the most important thing, understanding of this thing. What is the appropriate attention and what is the inappropriate attention, or Yoniso Manasikara or Ayoniso Manasikara. That is the base in practice. And the next part you mentioned about the different views.
Yeah.
Actually, in commentaries try to explain it as something, some explanation about anatta. But I don't know, my understanding is very simple. Maybe it is very narrow and understanding. My understanding is Buddha says here, the people who not Yoniso Manasikara or people who in Ayoniso Manasikara, inappropriate attention, then they should not think about the life existence after that and samsaric existence. Because if they try to think about that, definitely they are in trouble. Yeah. Therefore, I think this is the point mostly in Buddhist culture all over the world, I think, not to understand. Because we always try to explain about this samsaric existence, and it is we have taken it as a huge subject in Buddhism. But I don't know how, according to Buddha's teaching, it is not a huge subject. And sometimes it is unthinkable subject, that is. Yeah. I think that therefore in this background at the beginning, this sutra try to explain about the Yoniso Manasikara, that is the basic point, and it is the dawn of the middle path. And other subjects are not need for this. Not only not need, but makes trouble also.
Okay. No, that's an interesting point of view. I think there is truth in it. I think we can discuss more about this. And Bante Jinananda, you raised your hand.
Thank you, Bante, for the opportunity. I listened to the starting comments and also very nice explanation from Bante Rahul. I have listened to his talks about the same subject before. And I also appreciate the ideas of both other Bantes. What I want to tell here is that how we understand asa, because a lot of people ask the question, why do we use the word asa while we have tanha and kilesa, and all these words are puzzling us in understanding the whole concept of negativity in the Buddha's teaching. So I think when we start reading a sutta or a concept, we should know the etymology of the particular word. Here, I think we need to define what is asava in the sense of how the Buddha understood the asava at his enlightenment, because at the attainment to the full enlightenment, the Gautama Siddhartha completed the whole training with the destruction of asava. So it is the only word we mention about what he destroyed at the attainment of enlightenment. So we should understand what is asava. I think these great monks will explain further about it in their next explanation. But I just want to mention here that is some scholars say that asava is influxes. It flows something out or in. Both interpretations are there in a scholarly discussion. It means that defilement or craving or whatever negativities we have in our mind start from out and come in. It is one interpretation. And the other thing is it has in us. And when we see, hear, taste, smell, and touch and think something, then something inside as defilement connect with those outwardly things, and then it flows out. So basically the words influxes or out means that something flow from outside to in and inside to out, means asava. So that is what actually even Yuttadhammo is trying to explain in his couple of videos, and also the book he wrote in a way. So I think asava therefore is three types: kamasa, bhavasa, avijjasa. Kamasa means the defilement that is always related to sensual pleasures or sensual pleasures itself. And then bhavasava, the taints of existence, that any defilement that relate to existence is called bhavasava. And then avijjasava, the ignorance, the not knowing everything as they are, is called avijja, related to Four Noble Truths. So in order to seeing, avoid, using, and all kinds of things, we have to practice the Dhamma. The very purpose is destroying these three types of asavas. So I think for me, this discourse is one of the masterpieces of the Buddha's teaching, because the thing I get into my mind is that the whole type of defilements and cankers, stains, whatever it is, there are there are 7 ways to destroy them. Just one way we cannot do it. In Satipatthana Samyutta, with regard to the asava, Buddha has said clearly that you have to practice 4 foundation of mindfulness to destroy asava. And in Satipatthana, Sangyutta Nikaya, elsewhere in Sangyutta Nikaya, it is said that if you understand what is coming through your eyes itself, and then ears, and things come through ears. That is the way to reduce the asava and also destroy the asava. So I think as many monks here said, that we should have clear comprehension or appropriate attention, the very word yoniso manasikara, to do that. At the same time, my emphasis is that we have to understand what asava is and how asava come into existence, and which way we should understand asava in order to remove it. The other thing I just want to draw your attention is the categorization of people here. Buddha clearly said that this could not be understood by just ordinary people. That is unforgettable here. Something has been done is in the name of the Buddha's teaching required for someone to understand these teaching. We don't see that the Buddha mentioned this kind of things in many discourses, but in some discourses, he started saying something very deep, that I say this only for someone who has done something in the prayer. I think that would be yoniso manasikara, that would be sammaditthi, that would be sampajanya, whatever it is. So someone has to have something about the training just to take the asava and train his mind to remove it. So that is another thing we never should forget when we take this discourse, because it is not for everyone. Even if you say that 7 steps to tame our mind, I don't think some people understand if we do not go into minor details of the discourse, because this is a very, very powerful discourse, which address all the subtle teachings of the Buddha. I just want some explanations of asava and also putojjana and aryasavaka and seeing and dasana, and also all these words from these great monks. I like to hear about them.
I think we are getting into a deeper discussion into all the teachings we find in the sutra. When we talk about the first step, dasana pahatabba, should be abandoned by seeing. Now, in the comments of the Majjhima Nikaya, the Middle Land Discourses of the Buddha, or translated by Bhikkhu Bodhi, and in the comment he said the word seeing, dasana, here refers to the first of the 4 supramundane paths, the path of extreme entry, Sotapatti Magga, so designated because it offers the first glimpse of Nibbana. The higher 3 paths are called the paths of development, Bhavana, because they develop the vision of Nibbana to the point at which all defilements are eradicated. And for those who are new to the teachings of the Buddha, this must be a bit complicated to them. And Bhante Rahula, how do we make it simple for people to understand? Let's say dasana pahatabba.
It's not simple.
Okay.
And that's why the Buddha said, this is for one who knows and sees, not for one who doesn't know and see. And thank you for pointing that out, that yes, ultimately the defilements, the asavas that are removed by seeing are those 3 first fetters, the asava of sakkaya ditthi, doubts, and clinging to rites and rituals. So that's starts the real Noble Eightfold Path, the supramundane Noble Eightfold Path is at that moment of seeing. Then it becomes much easier to practice all the other things. Of course, not, we don't have to wait until we attain the stream entry before practicing, as I mentioned before, developing mindfulness and concentration. But I wanted to add one more comment about the meaning of asava that Venerable Jinananda was talking about, that Bhante Henapola Gunaratana, whom you all know, he has a nice, I like his definition of it. He calls the fermentations. So the asava is like brewing. You know, if you're brewing something like alcohol or fermentation and brewing, these asavas, all these asavas that you mentioned, kamasava, bhavasava, dithyasava, they've been brewing for many, many, lifetimes in our unconscious mind, because we've been going through the samsara for, unlimited lifetimes. And these have been brewing all the time. And then when we're pricked, they outflow, but they go on brewing as we keep acting. So that's another just a definition about these asavas. They're not just coming in and going out, but they're brewing all the time, gaining strength as we add our, ignorance and so on to them.
Is there any other Bhantes or venerable monks and nuns who would like to add into this? The defilements that should be abandoned by seeing. And I think it's in the sutra, it's also saying that when you pay wise attention, and wise attention is all about seeing the Four Noble Truths. And that helps a lot. Yeah. Do you have anything else to add into the first step? Okay. Venerable Jitchan.
I like to add a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Sometimes some people have understanding about this dasana. They translate as philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
There is no that idea. It is the understanding of Four Noble Truth. That is the dasana. It is not the understanding of philosophy. Some people think dasana, if we read the sutras, then we know the philosophy and we have dasana, then already we go on, now attain to the path.
Yeah, thank you, Bhante, for adding that insight into this discussion. And Venerable Jechan from Singapore, you raised your hand. I'm pretty sure this is like a new, this is your first time, and you're very interested in this. And also you're coming from kind of Mahayana tradition, but it doesn't really matter. We all are learning and practicing the teachings of the Buddha. And I know you very well, so I'm very positive you have something very interesting to add into the discussion.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you to all of the Bhantes here. And it is true that this is my first time here, and also my first time listening to so many terms from the Pali or the Sanskrit terms, because my learning is more on Chinese side or the classical Chinese side. So when all of you talk about certain terms in Pali or Sanskrit, it's something new to me, which remind me back when I was in University of the West, when I was taking the Pali class from the professor, which I have no idea what he's talking about, but need his explanations to understand the term. But I've been away from University of the West for more than 10 years, so almost forget most of the terms here. But thank you very much for describing in English. So at least I know that when you talk about these terms, what it means. So, which is very important. And today we talk about the seeing, and also Bhante Rahura explained to us about the seeing and also the wise attentions of these teachings here, which remind me that in our Mahayana traditions, there's one term called Wuming. Wuming, in a way, is translated into English called ignorance. But personally, I don't know about the Pali terms for this. But my understanding about this Wuming is doesn't mean that we don't see.
So
but rather is that we see
avidya. In Pali term is avidya. Yeah.
Avijja. Oh, Bante, you're good. Avijja. So a lot of time is that we know it. But the thing is that we know it so well, but we can't ignore it. We have difficulties to ignore it. And we still do things that we know that we shouldn't do it. We know that this is something that greediness, craving, we shouldn't do it. We know that our sense organs interact with our consciousness, the sixth consciousness. And then after that, we have this reaction. We know it. And also sometimes we know about the consequences. But the thing is that we have difficulties to defeat it. So a lot of time is that it seems like we ignore it. And then it comes up to the consequences. So before we have these sections, we have a short talk with Bante Rahura, is that seeing and practicing is pretty difficult. Because a lot of times is that we know it. We also learn it in a way that we also understand it. But it's so difficult to not to follow or not to being dragged away by our own habit. In Chinese, we call it 习气, the habits, the attachments to certain things so strongly. So how do we have the wise attention? When we talk about wise, what is the definition of wise? And how do we cultivate or push ourselves to have this wise attention, whereby when we know it, but how do we make ourselves even stronger when we face it? And this is something that in a way the sutra also mentioned about it, but cultivation is something that how do we push or give energy ourselves to able to manage ourselves? So this is something, just a short sharing to all the Bantes here.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Venerable Jachan, for your inputs and your wisdom. And I'm pretty sure all these are enriching our discussion. You know. So this seeing, I think the summary of this first step of this sutta. The fermentation stains that should be abandoned by seeing. So not seeing leads to the increase of the defilements, and the seeing leads to the decrease of the defilements. So now I think maybe these are the terms that most people may not have a full grasp of these words. And I think as you, our friends who are watching us, continue listening to this discussion, and these words will become very clear to you. Venerable Bante Kusala raised his hand. I'm pretty sure he also has something to add into this discussion. Bante Kusala.
Thank you, Bante. Sorry about joining late. I was watching it from Facebook until I had the proper background to join from Zoom. So in the sutta, we are talking about seeing part here. And toward the end of that explanation, it says, this dasana, seeing, contributes to see the self-view and abandon it. That is self-view. In Pali is called sakkaya ditthi, taking your own experience as I, mine, and myself. And now take, for example, someone who is in a meditation retreat, and if they just go for a calming experience, I don't think they anyways start seeing this aspect of the Buddha's teaching. They just needed calmness, which is, I think, great, but this kind of insight is not there in that kind that retreat, that place. So we need to see that Sutavarya Savako, someone who is a learned, noble disciple, that training includes seeing the reality that none of these things are self-bound. There is no such thing as a self, and this also is pointing at you becoming a stream winner, going against a stream and realizing that, such was my view before, and now I no longer have to hold that kind of a view, because you see the truth, you see the reality, and this is so liberating. So Sabbasava Sutta, that way, in the very first step, ask the learned noble disciples to abandon, see and abandon the self-view. Until you see it, you are not able to abandon. Similarly, you let go of vichikicha, your doubt, doubting that this path won't work for you, doubting the Buddha's teachings, doubting about your own ability to become awakened. So many ways we associate doubt also is no longer present strongly in that person, because you see that it is working right here and now. And also the wrong practices someone would adhere to, thinking that these practices would lead to enlightenment, also are abandoned, because you see that they don't contribute to peace. They don't contribute to lasting nibbanic experience when they are practiced. So you see, the very first step has this liberating effect, because people are taught to see and abandon. See that this leads to arousing of lust, hatred, and delusion. This leads to arousing of avidya, ignorance. This leads a person to continue existing or dwelling in sansaric cycle. Now you see a lot of putting things into perspective happen here. So this is a mind game. Because when you have analyzed things, especially Dhamme here basically talk about thoughts. You start seeing your thoughts. When you are purifying them, you see that this leads to ignorance, this leads to being bound in karma world or sansaric world. This leads to self-view. So when you are analyzing things like that, there is this realization that you no longer have to hold on to any of these views. And there itself, you feel so free. You feel so free from defilements, asavas. The flow stops. You don't see the flood coming toward you and taking your property away. You are just letting things be, no longer bothered about what comes and goes, because you see things as they are, and you don't have a conflict about this side or that side, meaning who's you and who's not you. Even here the Buddha talks about, some people getting into thinking about where did I come from, where will I go after this. These are normally thoughts people get into when they begin their meditation practice. The first thing they want to do is to find out who they were in the past life. Even that, the Buddha says, just let go of those thoughts and just be free, and see what is contributing to your inner peace here. So that seeing is an amazing experience. It's like you having the map with you, so you are not going to get lost. Thank you, Bhante.
Yeah, thank you, Bhante Kusala, for adding more very interesting insights into this discussion. And also, like I don't know, maybe this might be too simple to explain it, like in how in English sometimes we say, aha, now I see it. Is this the aha moment?
Absolutely. I think there will be many aha moments when you start seeing, what you haven't seen before, as if you were blind.
Bhante Jinananda, you raised your hand.
Yes, I just want to hang around the first one, the asavas that should be abandoned by seeing, because it implies a lot. I think there should be a way to develop this seeing just to abandon the taints or asavas. I quickly remember, and also in my practice, I use satipatthana into this, because where we go to develop seeing, one has to ask this question. It is okay, it is all perfectly right that seeing things as they are is very, very important, and it is one of the magical and remarkable teaching of the Buddha. Just to emphasize, his teaching is different from other teaching. Of course, yes. So I think Satipatthana training does this for us, because if you look at the Kayanupassana, particularly Sampajanya Pabba, which I like very much, it teaches us to be really mindful of what we do and what we think and what we actually do in the sense of mindfulness. In terms of understanding seeing, I think mindfulness, sati, must come here in effect to make the seeing meaningful. So, for example, gachanto va gacchami pajanati. In Pali, in English, it says when you walk, you have to comprehend that you are walking. So it is not I walking or me walking or somebody else walking. If we go into deeper sense of Satipatthana, it just a being is working, or a kind of elements is taking steps. So that kind of seeing should be there in order to stop asava or fermentation there. Isn't this teaching us in Sabbasa Suttas, particularly in this fact, that vipassana is taught there immediately? Because when we come to Vedananupassana, Sukhangva Vedanang Vedyamita Sukhang Vedanang Vedyamita Pajanat, when we have pleasant feeling, we understand that it is a pleasant feeling, which is Yoniso Manasakara as well as mindfulness, Sammaditi, everything comes together. So then when we have this training in Satipatthana, I think we see what asava and what is not asava clearly. So seeing is manifested with that, in my view, so that one has to station on Satipatthana in order to practice what the Buddha said in Sabbasa. So particularly the first factor, seeing and abandoning asavas. I think that is what I wanted to share here. As we discuss the first factor, so we have to understand who we are and what we are in the sense of seeing, and then in Satipatthana teaching we have other skandha, what you call 5 aggregates, and sensors and all kinds of things are there in Satipatthana training, so that we would definitely practice seeing as well as other method of destroying asavas here in Sabbasa Sutta. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Bhante Jinananda, for adding more insights into this discussion. I think it's very important for us to understand and see. Seeing is the most difficult part, I guess, right? That's why we take a lot of time. Even in this sutta itself, Sabbasa Sutta, I think there are more explanations given by the Buddha to the first step, the fermentation stains that should be abandoned by seeing. And Bhante Pemaratana, you raised your hand. You have more to add into discussion.
Yes, Bhante, I think you are correct. Seeing is the most difficult part. I have been thinking of the question that our Bhikkhuni Ju Chin, right?
Yeah,
raised before, because she has an important question that sometimes we know that these things are bad, these things have bad consequences, and these things have been taught by the Buddha. But even though we know, sometimes we cannot prevent ourselves from attaching to things. We cannot prevent ourselves from experiencing the asava. So I think, so her question was that sometimes, although we know that these things are impermanent, these things are have bad consequences, but still we cannot do this. I think I was listening to Bhante Kusala and Bhante Jinananda, and they were explaining what we really mean by seeing. So we need to understand there's a big difference between knowing and seeing. That's a very important difference, So I think even in the sutta, Buddha mentioned these two words, right? Janato, passato. One who knows, one who sees. We need both actually. So we become janato, we become someone who knows by learning the teachings of the Buddha, by simply learning them. But then we need to move to what we call seeing or passato, and of course dasana also has the same meaning. So that shift is starting from knowing the facts, knowing, and then moving to seeing. Seeing is more like experiential knowledge. So sometimes people already know that smoking is bad, and they know there are consequences. But simply knowing as a fact, factual knowledge is not enough. So that's why we need to move to seeing. So as Bhante Rahula, Bhante Kusala, Bhante Jinananda explained, this is a different way of knowing, so directly experiencing it. So I think our challenge is how we can move from knowing to seeing. For that, as all the other Bhantes mentioned, we need penetrative attention or wise attention, what we call yoniso manasikara. We need mindfulness definitely, and we need the practice of these techniques to move from knowing to seeing. I was just thinking about an example, Bhante. Let's say we have a treasure box.
Yeah.
We have a very beautiful treasure box. We all want to have it. So we crave for that treasure box. We are ready to fight with others to to gain this treasure box. But somebody told us that, oh, there's nothing inside it. There's no point of attaching this box. There's no point of quarreling over this box because there's nothing inside. So maybe some trustworthy person told us. So maybe we have some knowledge, and maybe we have some understanding, some knowledge. But we still, although some people have, some trusted person has said that this box has nothing in it, but we still may feel like owning it or attached to it. But maybe if we believe, maybe if we keep the trust in that person's statement that there's nothing important inside here to attach, by trusting it, if we can do a little bit experiential knowledge, and maybe get some chance to have a glimpse of what is inside the box. Maybe if you cannot open hole, maybe we find some little hole and see inside, we realize that, oh, there's nothing. But that is experiential, that is seeing. Right? Hearing from someone is knowing, but actually going there and have some glimpses, even not fully, but at least some glimpses, is seeing. But once we really see that there's nothing inside that box, definitely we will lose all of our attachments. We will never fight for it. So that's the shift we need to make. So I think there's a lot of things happening there with what we call, appropriate attention, mindfulness, constant investigation, reflection. All these things have to be there to move from knowing to seeing.
Yeah, I think Bhante Premaratna, thank you for giving that metaphor, and I think it's very important for us to understand. Even it will make much sense to our audience, and this takes me to the most sutras where Buddha is talking about his three special knowledges, right? Pubbe Nivasanusati Jnana, Chutupapata Jnana, and Asavakha Jnana. And I think the third one, is a destruction of the fermentation stains, asavas, right? The kamasava, bhavasava, vidyasava, even ditthasava. So to come to that level, first Buddha saw he himself in the past immemorial, and what led him to different lifestyles, and then what led the all sentient beings to tour in this cycle of life based on their own karmic actions. And so then he maybe saw that there are these taints, asavas, they are holding the sentient beings into this cycle of life, and they cannot be free. They are suffering in this cycle of life. So maybe what Buddha did was, through his meditation, he was able to see what are these taints, what are the taints that are holding me up in this cycle of life. And so when he saw it, then he was able to remove them, right? I think the seeing the taints, the defilement is very important, isn't it? Yeah, Bhante Jinana, do you raise your hand?
I'm sorry for taking many times, but I just wanted to say this, that Bhante Premaratna's story is really beautiful. And thank you for the very interesting point, the difference between Jantu and Passato, because it's a term that is really difficult for many people to understand, so that you brought the point that we should have kind of understanding about these two. Yeah, indeed, a lot of people talk about Janato and Passato, and what does that mean? One of the interesting point I found out is that simply, if you know that everything is unsatisfactory, everything is dukkha, that is a kind of knowledge you should have about your life. So your life is, you know that your life is, and everybody's life is under suffering, under the word dukkha, no matter how pleasurable it is at the present moment. And Passato, when you realize that you are having all these vicissitudes of life, you are going to work on that. You slowly away from you become away from unnecessary things. So you experience that, okay, this is the best way to go with this life, since this is impermanent. So why do we say this? Because some people say that one has to learn all the Tripitaka just to complete the Janato, and then only one complete the Passato. No, just the understanding about what life is called Janato. And we can find this in many discourses, in many references, that some people came across the Buddha, and Buddha delivered the Dhamma. They complete both at once together. So Janato is in my understanding, meaning is being able to know what exactly your life in, how it exists, how it goes forward, and so on. And then you work on that. And Sutta itself, says that Janato is knowing that there are 7 steps to tame our mind. And when you practice it, the experience comes that, okay, this is right. The Dhamma is well said by the Buddha. It is something that is practical. And experience comes after that, because you know that there are 7 steps to avoid or destroy, abandon. I would like to add a story about a great monk in the Buddha's time to mean this very much. That is Venerable Rattapala. So Venerable Rattapala was a young person who was having all kinds of luxurious things in his life. And one day he listened to the teaching of the Buddha, and it was the turning point of his Yoniso Manasikara rising. At the same time, he understood that this life is not what I should have now, because it is in vain and I do not want it. So later on, he said that um, very important thing. He understood that the life with all kinds of luxurious thing and other things is useless, and that is called janato. He came to know about it, and he got the passato part of it by practicing the Dhamma with so much eager. In my understanding, he was practicing Satipatthana, he was practicing other teachings in the 7 factors of enlightenment to complete passato part. I'm not saying that one has to have complete janato and passato to begin the training, but we should have some kind of training on that. With that in mind, I just want to say, when you have seen exactly as it is, there is developing the bhavana, bhatabha, and other things come in effect. So that I think they are interrelated, interlinked. That should also be understood if we understand the message of the Sabbha Sutta very well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Bhante Jinananda. Yeah, I think that's a wonderful story for our audience to know or to learn the story about the Rattapala. I think even in the Majjhima Nikaya, there's a sutta by that name, Rattapala Sutta. And maybe one day during our bi-weekly sutta discussion, Rattapala Sutta could be the discussion topic. So Bhante Kusala raised his hand. You have more to add.
Yes, Bhante, I love that simile by Bhante Pemaratana about the box. It's a little bit embarrassing though, that to think that we are all little boxes, and the Buddha says nothing there. And until we see it ourselves, and then we tell ourselves, don't look back, you're not going that way, because now you see that it's actually empty. So I love that. But I think Bhikkhuni Ju's question about, we know that nothing there and we are still doing all the usual stuff, we know that this is, we drive in one direction, we know that destination is empty, there's no view there. And so it's like people swimming in the near shore without really crossing to the other end. So this happens, I think, because we don't even see that there is more to see, or we just ignore the fact that there is more to see. So this is our tendency to fall into the darkness. We, light is beautiful, but so what? We like to stay in the darkness. So for this, I think we need a lot of encouragement, these kind of discussions, enlightening pieces. These seeing stages, janati, pajanati, abhijanati, parijanati, these are to be studied as well. Janati is just knowing, abhijanati is knowing deeply, parijanati is completely knowing. I think until you reach to that complete knowing, you haven't known it. Then only you don't have any conflict with the conventional or absolute realities. So, because you see both sides and you are not shaken. So that's my 5 cents.
Yeah. So now maybe my question so what's the purpose of seeing? Why someone could be asking this question? So why do we have to see? For what reason?
Well, I think even if you take the Eightfold Path, for example, coming to right view comes after seeing the Four Truths. So without seeing that, you don't even think that there's a need to, there's any urgency to come out of the cycle. It's like a hamster, just spinning, and that's what we love doing. So the point of seeing is seeing that you don't have to be this way.
So a kind reminder to our friends who are watching us on Facebook and YouTube Live, If you have any questions regarding today's discussion about seeing, or any other thing, please feel free to make a comment. We will take your questions like previous times. So I think, we have 6 more steps to discuss. Maybe the seeing is very important, and the seeing will help us practice the next 6 steps. So the second step is Sangvara Pahatabba. The asavas that should be abandoned with the restraint of the sense faculties. And the third one, Patisevana Pahatabba, asavas that should be removed or abandoned through the proper use of requisites. And the next one, Adhivasana Pahatabba, the asavas that should be removed through forbearance. Next one, Parivajjana Pahatabba, asavas that should be removed through avoidance. Vinodana Pahatabba, asavas that should be removed through destroying. And the last one, Bhavana Pahatabba, the fermentation stains that should be abandoned by developing. So now, all these, Sangvara, Patisevana, Adhivasana, Parivajjana, Vinodana, and Bhavana. And how do we practice these 6? The first one is the seeing, and the next 6 steps. How do we practice them in order to remove these defilements? Bhante Rahula, do you have anything to?
Yes. Well, the defilements removed by seeing is just the first step. Even a Sotapanna still has greed and hatred, and is susceptible to creating all further unwholesome karma, even though he might not be reborn in lower realms, but he can still suffer in up to 6 more lifetimes, as a human being, and so on. So, the seeing is, you mentioned, what is the use of the seeing? It's to act as an impetus then to practice the rest of these steps, which are restraining, and all the rest of them and the seeing enables us to practice the rest of these steps, and especially the bhavana. So the seeing and the 7th factor, the 7 factors of enlightenment are what we're developing. Where we have to develop mindfulness, as Venerable Jinananda was talking about. That mindfulness is the most important, and then the investigation of Dhamma. So in their restraining, that's where the mindfulness comes to. The most important aspect is that we break the precepts, or we say some unuseful speech or body language or thoughts because we don't catch them soon enough. We don't catch our intentions soon enough. So they well up so fast. So unless our mindfulness is very sharp, we catch ourselves, always, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done this. Well, it's too late once you did it. So we have to then make a determination not to do it again. And this is where the precepts are important too. It's not about restraining just through mindfulness, but the precepts are a type of restraint, right? Whether you're taking the 5 precepts, the 8 precepts, 10 precepts, or the monastic precepts, these are like a restraint that you keep reminding yourself to refrain from these negative actions. And so the precepts themselves are a kind of a intellectual restraint, but without the mindfulness, then that's why people break precepts, because they're unmindful. And as I already mentioned, these habits come up so strongly. and then they break them. Then they have to go back to the temple or the monk and say, "Oh, please give me 5 precepts again," and so on. So I think this second step of restraining involves both mindfulness and observing the precepts, because the precepts are what really remind us. If you repeat them every day, and then you have the intention to do something, you're likely to, oh, yes, I shouldn't tell that lie or use some wrong speech and or any of the other things. So that's where I see, the seventh factor, the bhavana, has to be practiced from the very beginning, and that helps you to see. And that seeing gives you the motivation to want to, not keep accumulating more suffering.
Venerable Bhantes, and of course Bhikkhunis, if you have anything else to add into other steps, like say, of course, Bhante Rahula made it very simple for us to understand all the steps. Now, if you take this Sangvara Pahataba, the sense restraint, I think we can have another discussion on this topic about the restraint of the sense restraint. Restraining the eye faculty, restraint of the eye faculty, ear faculty, nose faculty, tongue faculty, body faculty, all this. Now, why is the restraint is very important? This Sangvara.
I think, Bhante, here, when we say restrain, it may sound like, we will block. Block things. But actually, if you read the sutta and also other sutras, restraining has a very interesting meaning. So here actually in the Sutra, restraining means actually restraining our sensory organs, eye, ear, nose, tongue, and five senses, and also the mind. So what we mean by restraining is not like, closing our eyes or not looking at anything or not listening to anything. It's not that kind of restraining. But here, I think Bhante Rahula mentioned in the beginning, actually, when we see or hear, smell, whatever, when you get sensory experience, usually we either select a beautiful part of it and we focus our mind on it and we preoccupied with only that aspect and we keep thinking. Or maybe we catch or we grasp the maybe an unpleasant aspect of that experience and we focus on that, we keep disliking it and resentful about it. So I think what we mean by restraining here is actually managing our sensory experiences. Like we keep our eyes open, we keep our nose and tongue, everything's open, but we have to have very strong mindfulness, and also we should have this comprehensive view that we may first catch the pleasantness of the object, but not the overall holistic aspect of the object. Maybe we only first catch the unpleasantness of the object. What we mean by restraining is like not to attach to like either side of this, a limited, narrow view of the object, but have a comprehensive understanding and not developing, and mainly like simply seeing, like if possible, try to stop at the stage of seeing rather than building something more than what it is in our mind. So it's a restraining, although we use the term restraining, is actually restraining further development of thoughts and story making in the mind, and not restraining the sensory inputs. But of course, we should also limit, to some level, that we don't have to go to unnecessary places and bombard ourselves with all kind of sensory inputs. We have to also have precepts to control that. But it's more like an inner kind of restraining rather than external kind of restraint.
So that is the Indriya Sangvara, the sense restraint. So if we don't practice Indriya Sangvara, the sense restraint, then asavas, the defilements, fermentations are going to become double and triple maybe, right? So Bhante Kamalasri, you raised your hand. You have something to add into discussion.
This word Sangvara, it has translated into English as restraint.
Yeah.
I think Bhante Narada from Vajraram in Sri Lanka, he's the one who translates this word into English as a restraint. We know, as we know, he's good translator and he did marvelous works. But here, he has translated his emotion, not the grammatical term, just his emotion he have translated. That is the trouble here. I'm agree with Bhante Pemaratana, and I like to say it is the word is Sangvara. Vara means be great. The great.
Vara means what?
Great.
Great, okay.
Yeah, great, noble. The great person, it is Vara. Yeah, sun means that it is specialized. Yeah, then it is look like verbally and physical, verbal and physical activities be the improve, or it is like civilized verbal activities and physical activities as a great person. That is the meaning of this word. I don't know what is the good word for in English. Maybe Bhante Rahul can try to find a good word for that.
Bhante Rahul, do you have any?
Well, I'm not a Pali scholar, so I'm really not in a position to try to give some definition to Samvara, but I usually just guarding the senses, restraining, guarding, guarding is another word. We guard them and not allow them to, proliferate into unnecessary other kind of thoughts. And so, I don't mind using the term restraining and guarding, as long as you understand the actual what we're doing in the practice.
Yeah, Bhante Rahul and Bhante Kamalasri, when we talk about the Noble Eightfold Path, one of the Noble Eightfold Path is the Samma Vayama. And Samma Vayama, right effort, can be practiced in 4 steps. Sangvara, Pahana, Bhavana, Anurakana, right? So Sangvara, I know Bhante Punnaji has translated that word as prevention.
Prevention.
Or prevention or something like that. So, we practice Indriya Sangvara maybe to prevent from the unwholesome thoughts or negative emotions, negative thoughts which are not present yet, right? Something like that. So we had to, like, of course, today we talk about, like in normal terms, in day-to-day life, people talk about prevention. Prevention, like say we have the fire extinguisher, right? In every house, or at our temple, we have fire extinguishers everywhere. Or in emergency, to prevent from the fire, or to extinguish the fire, to prevent from the danger. So this Sangvara Pahatapa, maybe we have to, as Bhante Rahula said, guarding the senses. Or so when we guard our senses, maybe that will help us prevent from falling into a lot of sufferings and pains or problems. Bhante Kusala, you raised your hand.
This is very interesting, Bhante Kamalasri, that you brought up about Sangvara and also about the problem of translating just the emotion. I also find the word Sangvuta that goes with Sangvara. I see in the sutta that Sangvarang Samvutassa Viharato. So this is this is also perhaps a question for you. Do you see Sangwutta in the same, perhaps with a different meaning? I'm just curious to know.
I think so.
Gnananda, it is better if he tried to say something.
Yeah, I think Bhante Kusala mentioned Sangwutta, the word Sangwutta. If I'm not wrong, it means also something something done already. You know, Sangvara has opening of something. You know, you have to do, you have to guard, you have to protect yourself. And the other mean when we say Sangvruta, you have done it. That is the another one meaning. And the other thing is Sangvruta is also used for something closed, something something already closed of something. You know, in normal understanding, we have, you know, things that are open for everyone, which is the total opposite of Sangvruta. And so when we say this word Sangvruta, that means that you have already done or closed something. Since you asked it, I just had this thought in mind to share with you. The other thing I just want to emphasize here is that Sangvara, as all the monks, including Venerable Rahula said, is guarding our senses. You know, where does mind begins of its own journey? It is in these six senses, Salayatana. So we have to understand what mind is in order, before we guard it, right? We have to understand how mind is generated and where mind is generated, and how, you know, influxes or taints or fermentation come into effect. Actually, these six senses. So when we talk about agantukehi upakkilese upakkilitang, every bad things come from seeing, the function called seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, and touching. And our mind is luminous in the basic sense. How this luminous, bright, brilliant mind could be defiled by seeing, hearing, tasting, and so forth. Then that is the exact thing how mind begins its journey. So if we guard our mind from unwanted thing, that is called yoniso manasikara. It is then we can keep our mind clean and clear. So patisanka yoniso chakku indriya sangvara sangvuto viharati. That is how Sangvara Pahatabba is begun by the Buddha. So patisanka yoniso, which means yoniso manasikara again, you reflect how you keep your mind away from asavas by guarding your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and mind. So it is very practical and very important. We have to understand that if we pay attention to six senses and their function, that is the starting point of removing or destroying or developing all kinds of good things. That is where the world begins. World means I, me, and myself.
Yeah.
So I think the very word bhavana means also this in effect of in line with Satipatthana. So you have Kaya Anupassana, Vedana Anupassana, all these teaching are taught us to guard our mind. In Satipatthana Sangyutta, in Salayatana Sangyutta, I remember a story of a person. He came to the Buddha and asked, how does one escape from all kinds of suffering? Then the Buddha started telling the deep Dhamma with the sixth sense restraint or guarding, whatever word we use. That is the place where the noble path begins. When we have the sense restraint, there is three things happen. That is the sangvara of our words, actions, and mind. So Trivida Sucharita begins, or three kinds of wholesome things begins by way of restraining our senses. when these three things completed, there are four noble for Satipatthana, four foundation of mindfulness is manifested in one's training. And when four things become completed in the sense of practicing, there are noble eightfold path, then Vijja, Vimutti, no, and all the other things happens followed by that. So the noble training begin the six senses and the restraint of six senses. I think that is what I wanted to share. And Indriya Bhavana Sutta clears a lot of doubts about the training, that one has to understand how eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind works, so that you can restrain, you can guard it, you can protect it from impure thoughts.
Yeah, that's very important, interesting, Bhante Jinananda. What you brought up here is like, you know, these senses are the world, everything. In fact, there is a sutta by that name called Sabba Sutta in the Samyutta Nikaya. And there is a monks, I will teach you the all. Listen and pay close attention. I will speak. As you say, Lord, the monks responded. The Blessed One said, what is the all? Simply the eye and forms, ear and sounds, nose and aromas, tongue and flavors, body and tactile sensations, intellect and ideas. This monks is called the all. And I think therefore this sense restraint, samvara, is guarding senses, is another key practice in order to free our mind from all the asavas. I wish we had more time. I think it's time is up for us. There are a lot of people watching us. I think this is very interesting for our audience. They are learning so much. We might be continuing to have another discussion on the same topic, but we have covered most of the steps to taming the mind or freeing the mind from the defilements. So I'm very grateful to all the venerable monks and nuns who contributed a lot. I'm grateful to Bhante Rahula, grateful to Bhante Kusala, I'm grateful to Bhante Jinananda, I'm very grateful to Bhikkhuni Jochen, Venerable Jochen from Singapore, I'm grateful to Bhante Kamalasuri, I'm very grateful to Bhante Pemaratana for making very interesting contributions into this discussion. And I'm also very grateful to Bhante Sila for participating in this discussion. And very grateful to all our friends who are watching us online. And please stay tuned for more discussions on the same topic, and maybe we will be able to bring more sutras into this discussion. So to conclude this today's discussion, we had to recite the Ovada Patimokkha verses. And shall I invite Bhante Pemaratana from Pittsburgh, USA, to recite the...
Okay. With the permission of all the venerable monks and nuns, let me recite the Ovada Patimokkha, the constant advices and reminders by the Buddha for all monks and nuns. Sambha papasansa akaranam kusalasansa upasampada Sachitanta pariyodapanam etang buddhani sasanam Kanti paremang tapotitikha Nibbānang paremang vadanti buddha Nahi pambajito parupagati Samano hoti parang vihetayantu Anupavado anupagato patimokkhecha sangvaro Matantang nyuta cha bhattasming pantan cha sayana sanang adhichitte cha ayogo etang buddhana sasanang ti.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Bhante Pevarata, thank you so much for beautifully reciting all the Patimokkha verses, and I'm very grateful to all of you. And there's a friend in YouTube, Chandra Shekhar P. He asked a question, but unfortunately we don't have time to answer your questions. Maybe in the future we will have an answer to your question. Okay. So in 2 weeks' time, we are going to meet again. So today, some venerable monks and nuns, they're not feeling well. They were not able to join. But I'm very grateful to have the presence of all the venerable monks and nuns today. And your presence is such a great blessing. This is the Sukha Sangha Samagi, unity of the monks and nuns is a great blessing. It's a joy and happiness and peace. So until we meet in 2 weeks' time, I wish you all the blessings of the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha for long life, good health, happiness, and peace of mind. Good night from Canada. Bye-bye.